No, I won't be doing like the big Duck Dynasty. Okay, so today is lesson 12. I guess I should actually plug in here. So largely I want to carry on with our trying to get as much, if not our entire single page mean stack app working. I'll also wait, maybe when we come back from our first break, so I'm gonna open up WebStore. When we come back from our first break, we'll talk about the final exam. I'll have to check the date. I know one of our final exams is on Friday the 13th and the other one is on, I believe, Saturday the 7th. But I can't remember. I have to look at my calendar to see which one is which. This is our last class. Okay, so our exam for this is not for a while. It's not for 2 weeks. 13th. But I'll talk a bit more. I'm sure more people will kind of trickle in as the day goes on. So our day is kind of front loaded. This morning's class will be fairly busy because I'm sure we're going to use the whole time because I want to try and complete this if we can. So we need a fair bit of time to build out the full stack app and get it running. This afternoon, I hope to let you guys be done by about 2 o'clock. We're going to have a quiz on unit testing. We're going to do web API as well as web API documentation with a neat tool that will automatically document your APIs, which is neat. So I'll show you that tool. I'm thinking that shouldn't take us longer than an hour. So we may just skip a break if we're kind of nearing the end at 2. We'll just push on and hopefully we'll be done early for your last class. Anybody who wants to be home to watch the hockey game at 4 o'clock, you'll be home. That's the goal. Okay, so I'm going to open up last week's project. We'll get it running. So I'm going to need 2 command prompts for this because we've got to start our Express API on the back end. Actually, I can't start it yet because I have a syntax error in here that I need to fix. So I'll show you where that error is, and then we'll need to run both the Angular client in one command window and our Express API, server API in another command window. So this was the last file we were working on. This was our tasks controller. They don't run because I missed the closing bracket right here on line 12. So what we had set up was we added this code to allow requests from our Angular client. And I missed on line 12. Separately, yes. You need to run it separately. So I'm going to close that bracket here. So now my code editor is going to should tell me syntactically I'm all right. I guess we'll see when we try and run it. Looks okay now. So I'm going to need to go to my root application folder and use nodemon to start the server API. And then I'll need a separate command window in my client folder to run my Angular app. Okay. So I still have a bracket issue. Hang on. Let's see. I think I have my extra bracket down here. Yes, that's right. So I had my closing bracket that was meant to go here. I had it after the next. So now I should be able to run. So my Express API should be running. So I can check that at localhost 3000 /tasks. And this gives us our JSON rendering. So we wrote this method last week. So now I'm going to open a new command window and go into the client folder. And then I'll get the Angular app running as well. So I'll go into my client folder, and I can either use npm start or I can use the Angular command ng serve, which will compile my Angular app, listen for changes on port 4200 for any compiled TypeScript changes. Yes, it is. Well, the TypeScript. Yes. It's called, rather than compiling, the term they use is transpiling. It's converting, because compiling basically means it's going to binary, which it doesn't do. No. So it tells me localhost 4200 should be available now. Angular live development server is listening. So this is where we kind of left things off last week. So we've set this up, but our tasks weren't populated. So we'll have to kind of get back to this. So let's kind of go from the front end back and we'll figure out what's going on. Okay. So we've set up a table in our HTML and we have a loop here, but we're not doing anything in that loop. So this loop is calling our task component.ts. And in here we have an initialize method that calls our task service. We have a get tasks method, and then sets our tasks variable equal to the result. Our task service calls our server API. In our server API, we allowed cross-origin requests, and then we just run a query to get our tasks and return them as JSON. So this is all set up. All we really need now is the HTML to populate the code inside our loop. If I go back to my HTML page, I need to fill out these columns inside our loop. So we can use our handlebars tags here. So we had set up our table heading, but we hadn't actually populated the data in our loop. So if I save this now and come back here, let's see if our, okay, we're obviously still missing something. So let's see why, what's going on. We're close. Obviously, I've missed something. I'll check my console. Okay, it's missing a favicon, but that can't be too big of a problem. Let's see what our web console is giving us. Okay, so our request was still blocked here through a cross-origin request. The same origin policy disallows reading the remote resource. So it's trying to hit our API, and our API is still saying okay, so we're gonna have to do a little more adjusting. Maybe what I'll do is this. We'll adjust our controller. Instead of specifying the host here, for now, I'm just going to allow any cross-origin request. I think if I just change this to a star in our tasks controller, this will allow any app to hit our API. We'll try that. So we had hard-coded localhost 4200 in our server controllers tasks. I'm going to try and allow any. Okay, hang on. Let me refresh. Okay, so we still have the same error. So we still are dealing with our cross-origin request. Let me check whether we set these things up correctly. So allow origin. The problem's actually here. I was going too fast at the end of class. This should be allow headers, and this should be allow methods. I copied and pasted my line 10 and didn't change. So we're allowing any origin. So any domain can call the API. We'll accept headers origin requested with content type and accept, and we'll allow these methods. So far, we've only used get, but we're going to use post, put, and delete for the other operations. Let's try again. Okay. Third time's a charm. So now our Angular component is calling our Angular service. Our Angular service is calling our Express API, which uses Mongoose and MongoDB to go and fetch our data. My fault for going too fast at the end of class last week trying to get this to show up. I think actually I'm going to try and actually put this back. I'm going to try this back to my Angular app rather than allowing any URL in. I'll set the allowed origin back to 4200, which means our Angular app can call our API, but no other domains can call our API. If I refresh, hoping it should still work, I shouldn't get cross-origin. Yes, it still works. And again, we could put this, maybe what would probably be a good idea is let's actually put this in the configuration file rather than hard coding it in. Let's move this domain to our config file. And then we would need to reference the config file in our controller. So I'm going to go to, I'll leave this up for a minute. Serge, give me a wave when you're done. I can see you're still kind of working on it. Yeah, or I may have put it on GitHub, but yeah, not the correct version. There were several problems with it, right? I had origin here, and I had this round bracket in the wrong place. So I'm going to go to my config and my globals file. So we have an API route. Maybe I'll set up a client route. Which will be for now localhost 4200. And then in our controller, we can use this client route configuration variable instead of hard coding in the URL. We'll need to reference our config file in the controller first, and then we can read this variable out. So once we've got this value added, we can require the file and replace that hard-coded domain with our globals.client route. So I'll go back to my controller. So we'll reference our config.globals. It's 2 folders up because this file's inside controllers, which is inside of server. So we've got to go out of the server folder to the root and then down into the globals. And now in our allowed origin, we should be able to use globals dot our globals.client root variable, which points to the same domain. Josh? Because I screwed up. Thank you. Yes, the folder's called config, the file's called globals. Thank you. So if I save this, it should run the same way now. It should still allow requests from our Angular app on 4200. It wouldn't allow any app on any other domain to hit the API. Only our own Angular app can make a cross-origin request to the API. Now we can still hit the server, like we can hit the API directly. I can go through my browser, or I can use my Postman API tool. We're going to need this afternoon in class. So if I want to use an HTTP tool like this, I can use this to test my API. Maybe, potentially. So I could use this kind of HTTP tool to make a GET request So we're not going through another application, we're hitting our API directly, so this works. I'm going to come back and use this again later. We'll certainly use it this afternoon. So we've got a quick list, we've got a list, which is good. Actually, let's see. Here. I'm going to connect to my database directly. Is it the internet connection is terrible? Is that why? It is? Okay. Well, then I will go old school. I'll try this instead. Maybe this will make things run more quickly. I should say I'm going to try. To connect to the database. Not working very well. Okay, well, I guess that's not going to work. All right, we'll come back to that. So what we also want to add on here is we want to add the ability to add, edit, and delete on this same page. So above my list, I want to add a simple form with name, priority, and complete fields and a save button. As soon as we click save, the task should get saved to MongoDB and our list should be updated in real time with no refresh of the page. So to start this, we need in our HTML file, we need a form up above our table. Actually, here's one of the neat things. We don't even need a form tag. We need the form elements, but we don't need a form tag. So I'm going to set up labels and inputs for our three fields. We've got name equals name, ID equals name. This field is required. And then I want to use an Angular directive here. I want this one. I want to bind any values in this box automatically to the name property of our task component. I'm going to choose ng model equals name. So that's going to bind whatever value is here to the name property. Now it's complaining here. It's saying we don't recognize name. That's okay. Let's look at why. In our task component, we need to define name, complete, and priority properties here. So we're going to define a name property As soon as I do that, notice that error goes away in my editor. It says, okay, now we know what a task, what a name property is. But complete as a Boolean and priority as a number. I'm not going to worry too much. Okay. So it's saying you can't use ng model. However, there's a solution for this. We need to import our forms module. So this ng model directive is part of the Angular forms module. And it says our component is not using it. So if we mouse over and I just click import forms module, my error goes away. And we don't see it in our task component. We see it in our, where is it? In our app module.ts, our main TypeScript file. It's now imported the forms module and added it to the list of imports automatically. Or we could do these things manually. So this is in the app.module.ts. This is kind of like our Angular configuration file, if you like. So I'm going to add so I'll copy those. Now this one's going to be a little different. This will be a complete. And this one is not required, but we've got to set it to type equals checkbox. And our last field is our priority. Our ng model is priority. And I'm going to add some more attributes to this one. We're going to say type equals number, min equals 1, and max equals 5. So the only acceptable values, input values here will be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So each one has a different ng model. First one's bound to name, the checkbox is bound to complete, and the priority is bound to the priority field. And then we need a button. It just says save. Notice we don't actually even require an HTML form tag. So this is really different from all other frameworks. In other frameworks, if we built a form like this, when we click that button, nothing will happen. If the button's not inside an opening and closing form tag, clicking it doesn't render any action. We're not using an HTML submit. We're going to use an Angular method on the click of the button. So instead, we're going to write a click handler this way. We're going to call a method, which we're going to have to put in our component. Turns red because we don't have this method. We're going to call an add task method. And because these inputs are bound to our properties automatically by Angular, we'll already have access to those in an add task button. So now we'll want to create this add task method in our Angular component. We'll need an add task method in our Angular service, and we'll need a post method in our Express API. Yeah, 3 adds. So I'll save that. Our form isn't going to load because of that call to add task. As soon as we write an empty add task method, our page should load. So now we'll go back to our component. And we'll write an add task method. Soon as I do this, our page should load because now the method it's trying to call, well, it exists. Okay, our form's not quite at what I want it to be. So we'll go back and make a couple of changes to it. I'll take out the class here. Let's see if that looks any better. Okay, so we've got an input for name, a checkbox for complete, priority. The only things we can do is 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. No other values are permitted. Okay, so in here, create new task object. And then call the service to add a task, which we'll call the server express API. Actually, complete we'll have to figure out because our checkbox is going to give us a value. Oh, well, we'll see what happens. Sorry, those should be colons. So we'll create a new task object, then we want to pass it to our service, and we're going to need an add task method in our service as well. This task service. We're going to send it our new task, and we're going to use an observable. We talked about this last week. We make an asynchronous call. We wait for a result. So once we get a result, if we just look at our page for a second, not sure where our data's gone. probably because this part's not complete. So we have this form at the top, we have the list down below. So as soon as the user hits save, we want our list to repopulate, and then we want to clear out the values from the form. The form should be empty again. We basically want to take what's in the form and just add it to the list. So we should make a couple of changes here. The first thing I want to do is I want to move this into a separate method called getTasks. And then in it, we'll call getTasks. Because after we add a new one, we want to call the get again. That'll refresh our list. I'm going to make a method called getTasks, which is void. And I'm going to move this code from inside ng on init inside of getTasks. And then I will call getTasks in here. I'm creating this separate method because I want to call getTasks after any time we update the database, after an add, after an edit, or after a delete. We want to refresh that list. So after we then add a task, the next thing we want to do is call getTasks. Whoops. So we're getting an error here because we don't have this method in our service. We'll have to create it. And then we'll need another method that clears out our form. We'll deal with that after. Let's see if we can add, get our list to update, and then we can, creating a method to clear out the form should be pretty easy. So I created getTasks. We moved the code from ng on init, and we're just calling this .getTasks in ng on init. So when the component gets initialized, go and get the list. And then when they click the button, add a task, create a new object, call the task service. So our next step is creating this method up here in taskservice.ts. So we need 3 different methods for adding. We've written the first one. One in the component, we need one in the service, we need a third one in the API. Yep. So for edit and delete, we're going to need the same. So we'll go to our task service and we'll create this method. So we've already got a getTasks. So we'll call add task. This one takes a parameter. It needs an object, a new object to add. And we're creating and populating this object in our component here. Create the object and pass it. So in this case, we're going to turn which method do we want to use for adding? Sorry? Yeah, we want to use the HTTP post. The same URL, so we don't need a different URL as the get. But in here, we need to pass in our new task as our request body. So it's similar to the get, but the get doesn't, we don't send anything to the API. We just make a get call to that URL. For post, we need to include this object. We need to send it something. And then we'll need a post method in our tasks API. I do admit I'm not quite sure where hang on, where did our data go? I don't know. Do I have an internet connection? I guess that'd be good to know. Okay. I have an internet connection. Can I connect to MongoDB? I think the issue may have been my internet connection. That's interesting. Cannot support. Okay, so it was because I was connected on the wired network. For some reason, it wasn't letting me to MongoDB, go to MongoDB. So we've written the add method in our component. We've written the add method in our service. We now need the post method in our Express API. So I'll go to tasks. We have two methods here. We have a get all and a get one. So now we need a post method. So at our root, if we get a post request, I guess I should use the right method. In here, we're going to call task.create. Now complete, we may have to do a little manipulation because normally checkboxes give us values of on or off, not true or false. So the complete part might throw us off a little. We may have to massage those values a bit. We'll see. So we call task.create. We pass in our values. And we get back either an error or a new task. So if we have an error, we'll send back the message with a status 400 bad request. Otherwise, we'll send back the new task object with the status of 201. 201 is the HTTP status code for resource created. So if we've created a new record, we'll use that status. So we'll see if we can add a task here. I have a feeling the Boolean nature of the complete field may trip us up a bit. We may have to play with this in order to get it to work. But we'll try it. So I'll add a new task, give it a priority, try to save it. We'll see what happens. All right, what do you know? It works. We can also see, now that I can connect to my database, I'm going to remove one of these in real time. So if I go to my tasks table, my task collection, I'll just shrink this down so we can look at the browser at the same time. So if I go to my, because Angular's constantly checking, if I delete one of these from MongoDB, as soon as I delete it, I'm deleting this solve priority dropdown. Okay, that surprised me. I figured our data would get moved. Why didn't it get removed? If I refresh, that one should be gone. Okay. The other thing we should do, though, is we should clear out the form as soon as it adds. So we can write a simple clear form method in our component. We'll take a break very shortly, I promise. So down below add task, let's write a clear form. So all we need to do is set our 3 variables equal to null. And then after we add a task, we should clear out the form. So I'm going to go and add one more. My list should automatically update and my form should clear out right away. So just add the clear form and add the call to it. So if I add, it should add this to the bottom of my list, and it should clear my form. Our page does not reload. Angular just handles updating the data in real time. So we've got 2 of the 4, 2 of our 4 CRUD operations working. We can add and we can read. So we're going to take a break here. I will push this stuff up to GitHub in case you need to reference it. Okay. And then we can work. We'll do delete next because delete's fairly easy. Update is the most complex because with update, we're going to have to click on one, populate those values into the form, and then save an update instead. Update the task, clear the form, repopulate the list. We should be able to get that to work today. Okay, let's take a break here.